In this video, we'll be going back in time and make the hoverboard from Back to the Future. So I was looking online and discovered a great template from an artist named Jhony Valencia. This is a great template that we can use to create an accurate model of the hoverboard. The link to the template is in the description. Okay, so first open up Blender and delete everything in the new project. We're going to click on the Z-axis and import our image references. So I'm going to import the top reference image. Then I'm going to do the same for the bottom reference image. So I'm going to just import it. Okay, so once you import it, you may not see it right then, and that's because the two images are actually colliding. So you want to move it slightly in the Z-axis. Now we can see both the reference images. Now we're going to do the same for the X-axis, and that would be the side reference image. Now when this comes in, it needs to be rotated. So now we have all our reference images imported. We're going to name these just so we know which layer is representing which image. Okay, now we're going to also lower the opacity of the reference images so it's easier for us to work. So you select the reference image, and then in the side panel you can lower the opacity down. .5 is pretty good. We'll do the same for the other reference images now. Okay. So now that we have this ready, we can get started with modeling our hoverboard. Okay, so we're going to click on the Z-axis and start from the top view. So we're going to bring a new plane and scale it so it matches our reference image. Now let's add a subdivision surface modifier and increase the levels view. We want to make sure that these two values are the same. So what you see here is also applied in the render later on. Okay, so now we can start adjusting our shape. We'll jump into the edit mode and add a few loop cuts so that our shape is molded to our reference image. That's great. Now we're pretty much done here with the top view. We're just going to jump to the X-axis and reposition our mesh. And we're doing this so it's easier for us to extrude it and give the mesh a bit more depth. So now that we've got our general shape, we're going to add a few more loop cuts so that our shape gets a few more harder edges. Because remember, we've got the subdivision surface on, and whenever we want to get corners, we would add loop cuts. So now we want to make sure that our mesh looks the same from the side compared to our reference image. So we're going to adjust these. And one thing to note is that when you're selecting vertices, if you don't have the X-ray option on, you would only select what you see and you wouldn't select the vertices on the other side. So you just want to make sure that you have the X-ray option on. Okay, so now we're just going to trace the reference and I'm going to rotate it by 25 degrees. Now we're going to add a few more loop cuts to take care of this edge. Now we're just going to check our shape and make sure everything is looking good. Okay, now we're going to go to the side view again. And to just make the hoverboard a bit more aerodynamic, I'm just going to make a few subtle changes here. Now we are following the reference image, but don't worry if it doesn't match 100%, as we'll be making our own little changes as well. Okay, so let's look at it from this view. It's looking good, and also here. Okay, so from this view, I am going to scale it back up again, but only in the x-axis, so that it doesn't lose its shape. That's great. So this is looking good for now, and I'm just going to jump back into the object mode and make sure everything is looking good. Okay, I'm quite happy with this. Now that we're done with the side view, we can just click on it and remove the reference image, as we don't need it anymore. Okay, so just to help, I'm going to name this, just to keep things neat, I'm going to name this base. Okay. So now let's move on to the bottom parts of the hoverboard. So now that we're done with the base of the board, we're going to hide it so it doesn't interfere with our work. Okay, so this is looking good, and we're going to create these smaller parts of the hoverboard. Okay, so to get started on these, I'm just going to bring in a new plane. Also make sure the X-ray view is on. And lower it. Okay, so we're going to jump into edit mode and delete all the vertices and leave just one. We're going to bring this to one of the corners here and add a mirror modifier. And this is a great tool, and it replicates whatever we create. So right now, if I move this, you can see that it's moving on the other side as well. But what we want is we also want it to be replicated on the other side. So we're going to switch the y-axis here, and you immediately notice that there are two additional vertices there, but they don't seem to be in the right place. And this happens because the origin point of the layer is not in the correct position. As you can see, this should be here. So to move this, we're just going to hold shift and right click in the center of the hoverboard and jump back into object mode and go to object, set origin to 3D cursor, and boom. You can see that it immediately moves. Now if you look again, you can see that all the vertices are in the right place. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can just get started with creating the outline of the shape. So we'll hit A and extrude them and trace the reference image. And we're going to carry on from this side. And we're not going to worry about any rounded corners for now. We're just going to create the very minimal shape. And one more here. And to connect these two, select these two vertices and right click, merge vertices, add center. I'm just going to move this higher. There we go. So now that we've got the general shape done, we'll switch clipping on and also add a subdivision surface modifier. This brings a lot of curves to our shape. With the clipping on, we can make sure that when we get close to the other vertices, they snap together. So they get connected really fast and we don't need to worry about leaving any gaps. Again, we're not going to worry about the rounded bits for now. We're just going to add a few more levels here to make sure our outline is smooth. And we're also going to bring this higher so they snap together. Fantastic. Now that we've done this, we can switch X-ray off and select 4 vertices and hit F to create a face. Remember to try and select 4 vertices whenever you can, so that your mesh is as clean as possible. So you can edit it whenever you like, or change it much easier. Okay. Again, we're going to select 4, and the last 4 here. And you can see we've already created a great base for our shape. We just need to edit it a bit more so that we can so that it matches our reference. So now I'm just going to add a few more loop cuts here. Now this is looking pretty good. Now we're going to select these vertices and right click, go to Loop Tools and Circle. If you don't have this option on, navigate to Settings, Add-ons, and look for Loop Tools. Okay, so immediately we get a really nice circle here, but we still need to adjust it. And before we do that, I'm going to extrude it and scale it down. And delete the faces, so we can position it much better. Now we're just going to do a bit of cleaning up. And that's great. Okay, so now that we're done with this, we're going to move on to the bottom bit. And usually when you bring in a new plane, it ends up in the middle of the project. So you don't want that. To prevent this from happening, you can just hold Shift and right click. And now we can bring in the new plane right over here. Again, we'll delete these so our work is easier. And we position it here and extrude it. And now we're going to do the same thing and select 4 vertices and hit F. And we'll add a few more loop cuts to take care of the edges. And again, we're going to select these vertices and right click, Loop Tools, Circle. Extrude and scale it down. So now we've got one of the elements of the hoverboard done, and we're just going to name it. Let's name it part 1. And we're just going to now move on to the next bit. Again, we're going to switch this off for now. So now we're going to hold shift and right click. So our new line ends up here. Then we're going to bring it in. Let's scale it so it matches our reference image. And I'm going to switch X-ray on, so it's easier to compare our mesh to the reference image. And I'm going to add a lot of loop cuts here. Let's jump into edit mode first and add, actually not just one, let's add a bunch of loop cuts here. And we're trying to line these up with the reference image. Okay, so I'm just going to bring these two up. So we'll just align these to our shape. And we'll add one more here. Okay, so now this is looking good. Now we're going to select these vertices and scale them down a bit. Don't worry about the sharp corners right now, as that's going to be fixed once we add a subdivision modifier. So we're going to do that now, and let's add it and increase the levels. And there we go. We've got the curves already in our shape. Now let's add a few more loop cuts to make sure we also get a few sharp corners there. Okay, so if we switch X-ray off, you can see that we've got the base shape there. And it's looking really good. And to create the screws, we'll just bring in a circle, scale it down, position there. Now for this one, we're going to extrude it and extrude it again, and one more time, and right click, merge vertices at center. And let's look at it from the side. There we go. Okay, so now that's done, we're going to duplicate it and bring it to this side. So now that we've created the screws, we're pretty much done here. I'm just going to go to object mode and switch X-ray off so that we can see what we've created so far. Let's switch this one on as well. Okay, so it's looking good, and all we need to do is extrude these layers. Let's do that now. I'm going to select this and go to edit mode and hit L and extrude. Okay, I'm going to just position this there so that we know it's right at the bottom of the hoverboard, and we're going to extrude it from here. Okay, so now we're getting a lot of rounded edges, and that's because of the subdivision surface, and we're going to add more loop cuts so that we get a bit of not too sharp, but just sharp enough edges. Okay, so this is looking great, and we're going to do the same to our part 1. Let's edit and see where we are. Okay, we're going to extrude it there. Let's have a look just to make sure everything is fine. Yes, it's looking great. Again, we need to add a few more loop cuts to get a bit of a sharper edge. So let's add that right now. And there we go. Now we're pretty much done with these parts. Let me just name this part 2. Let's jump into the top view here and hold shift and right click and bring in a circle. Scale it down, position it. Now we're going to extrude it a few times. We'll do it a few more times than we need to. It makes the mesh a lot more easier to shade later on. So we're just going to do that, and it's looking pretty good. Now let's just move these a bit higher to create the depth, and we'll bring this higher as well. This is looking good. Now, one cool thing in Blender that we can do is to create a vertex group, and we do this by selecting a bunch of vertices, or maybe just one, depending on what you need, and going to the object data properties and creating a new group and clicking on assign. Now, we're creating this group for something that we're going to do a bit later on, but it's very useful, and once we get to it, you're going to love it. Okay, so now that we've done this, we're going to jump back into object mode and maybe add another subdivision surface here. Yep, it's looking good. Now we're going to create that vertex group for these 2 parts as well. So we'll jump into edit mode and select the top. Actually, we need to switch X-ray on. And we'll select, we're just missing a few loop cuts here as well. Okay, so we're going to select these. So we'll select these points and create a vertex group and assign it. And we'll have to do the same to our other points. So now that we've done that, we're just going to switch X-ray off again, just to see what we're doing here. So we need to move these other parts a bit higher. There, okay. So in Blender, one of the cool things that you can do is, actually let me just adjust this. Okay, so one of the cool things that we can do in Blender is we can add a modifier called shrink wrap. And what this does is, and then what we can do is we target our hoverboard. And what this does, it connects all the vertices that we have for this shape to the hoverboard. So even if you move it around, it's always connected to the hoverboard. But we don't want all these points to be connected, and only a selected few, which brings us to the vertex group that we just created. So we're going to select that as the vertex group, and boom. You can see even if we move this shape, those vertices are always connected. Okay, so I'm just going to bring this out a little, and fantastic. Now we're going to do the same to the other parts and add the shrink wrap modifier to it. And we'll do some cleaning up here. Fantastic. Now we're just going to duplicate this. Perfect. Okay, so now that we don't need the bottom reference image, we're going to select it and delete it. And let's move on to the top section. Okay, so I'm just going to move the reference image, and from what I can see, all we need is another circle here, which is the footrest. And one of the ways that we can do this is to just duplicate this, and we'll bring it to the top. Okay. So now we don't need the top reference image either. So we're going to remove it. You see these edges? We can just get rid of these by clicking on the base and right-clicking and clicking on Shade Smooth. There we go. Now we've got the base of the hoverboard ready. We just need to add the Velcro band here. And this is also really easy. All we have to do is bring in a plane and scale it down. And we'll jump into edit mode, and let's just add a few loop cuts here, here, and just like that. And we're going to select these vertices and create a vertex group as well. And we're going to lower them. The outer edges, we're going to lower those a bit more. And here we're just going to erase this. Now we're going to add a subdivision modifier and level it up. Now we're going to just add a shrink wrap modifier and target it to the circle and select our vertex group. And we're also going to increase the offset a little bit so that our meshes don't clash together. Let me actually just lower this a bit and raise this as well. Actually, before I raise this, I think to let's remove this. It's better to just leave those outer vertices connected. Okay, now we're looking good. I'm just going to rotate this as well because that's how the hoverboard works. Okay, fantastic. Now we've got a fully functioning hoverboard model, and we can get started with the shading. Before we do that, I'm just going to select all the shapes and click on the base again and Command P and Object. So now we've got all these other parts grouped up with the base of the hoverboard, and we can move it around easily, and they all would be moving as one. Great Scott. Let's move on to shading. Okay, so let's select the base of the hoverboard and add a new material. We'll call this main. And we're going to add a base color. We're going to go to hex and paste this color. I've added all these colors in the description below, so you can easily copy and paste them. Okay, there we go. Now we've got some color there. It's looking good. Let's rotate the hoverboard and give these parts the materials. Okay, so let's select this part and add another material. And so we're going to give this one another color. There we go. And we need another material for these smaller parts. Now onto these circular parts. So with these, we're going to add two materials to the same mesh. And to do this, it's actually really simple. All we have to do is create a new material, and let's add this. And we're going to jump into edit mode and select these points. With these points selected, we're going to create a new material, one that's a bit darker, like that, and assign it. So now we've got two materials assigned to one mesh. There. Now, whenever we change anything on this side, because they're using the same materials, it's going to affect everything. Okay, so for the top footrest, we're going to add another material, and we're going to set another base color for this, and this would be a greenish color. And we're going to add another material for the Velcro band. Let's use the same green for now. Actually, I've just noticed something that we forgot to do, and it's to give the Velcro band a bit of thickness, because right now it's way too thin and papery. So to do this, all we have to do is add another modifier called solidify. There we go. And this adds thickness to our mesh. I'm just going to offset it. Okay, so let's rotate this again and bring this down slightly. There we go. Okay, that's looking much better now. Yeah, okay. Fantastic. So we've got the base materials on here as well. And before we do anything else, I'm just going to change my render settings. I'm going to change the render engine to cycles, and I'm going to select GPU. We're going to add a ground so it can catch some shadows for us, and I'm just going to add another material, and let's darken this. Okay, so now let's just jump into the shading page and also change this to our full-on render view. Okay, so our hoverboard is looking pretty good. It's just missing a few elements. So just before that, I'm just going to add... Okay, so just before this, I'm going to add a sky texture. There we go. Now it's just missing a few things, and we're going to add a Velcro type material to the band and add a wave texture, as well as a color ramp. We're going to use the same colors, the same green, but on this one we're going to make it a bit darker. Now we're just going to link color to factor and color to base color. There we go. We've already added a really nice Velcro look to the band, but I'm going to change the scale to 15, as I think that just looks a lot better. And we can remember, you can change the scale, you can also change the color and how much you think how deep should the wave texture be. I think that looks great. I'm just going to add a bump shader as well, so that we can have the wave, the material also really react to the surrounding light. So let's connect the factorial to height and normal to normal. There we go. Now it looks a lot more three-dimensional. Now it looks a lot more 3D. There we go. Okay, so now it looks a bit too much, so I'm going to lower the strength so we don't get too much bump on this. Okay, so now it's looking good. And we're pretty much done with this. All we have to do now is now we just need to add our textures. I'm going to side view here, and I'm going to add another vertex here, just so that we can differentiate the top and bottom half. Okay, so let's just bring our top texture in here, and we're going to add a mix RGB as well. And link the color to the first color, to the second color, and color 1 will be the same color. We also want to make sure that alpha is connected to factor. So before we link the color to base color, let's just do something first. When you bring in a texture, you need to do a UV unwrap. And so we need to make sure that Blender knows which faces the texture has to lay on. So let's select those faces. Fantastic. Then we'll click on Z and hit U, unwrap, and then U, project from view, in bracket bounds. Now once we've done that, we can easily link the color to base color, and our image will show up here. We can also edit the way our image has been placed by going to the UV editor. I'm just going to do a bit of cleaning up here, just to make sure that the texture is where I want it to. Okay, that's much better. Now that we've done that, we're pretty much done here. And the only issue is that we've got the same pattern kind of showing up on the other side of the hoverboard. And to fix this, we're just going to go to material here, and we've got a main here, and let's call this main dash top. Let's rotate the hoverboard. And look at it from the top again. Actually, before we do that, let's add another set of materials, and we're going to select main top and duplicate it and rename it to main bottom, just so we can differentiate the two. And we're also going to change the top texture to bottom texture. There we go. Okay, so now the image has changed, but it's not in the right place, and in fact we haven't assigned any faces to this material, so we're just going to do that now. We'll go to edit mode, and we're going to select the bottom half. Fantastic. So we've got them selected. Now we'll just assign it to the bottom material. And also jump into the Z view and again unwrap it from project from view bounds. Now this will immediately put the texture, the bottom texture, over our shape. Now we can again jump into the UV editor here and make sure you're editing the bottom half, and we're going to again change this. Okay, it's looking good. It's a little off, so I'm just going to fix that here. Fantastic. Okay, now we're done. I'm going to the layout view so we can get a better look at our hoverboard. Okay, so now we're nearly there, but there are a few things that I'd like to change. So we'd like the texture color to be linked to roughness. And what this does is that it basically makes the image, the texture, react to the surrounding light. Now that we're done with this, let's add a bit of motion to our hoverboard, just so it looks like it's actually hovering. I've used these scripts instead of keyframing, and you can use them too. I'm going to include them in the description so you can easily copy and paste them. So what we do is we just add a hashtag just to let Blender know that we're using a script, and we're going to add this. And what this does, it immediately adds a bit of motion to our hoverboard. Yeah, it's looking good, but it's too much, so I'm just going to increase this to 80. Yeah, that's looking much better. I'm going to use a different formula here just so it looks a little different. And there we go. I think it's a little too much even, so let's go by 100. Yep, and same, maybe 80 here. Yep, this is looking much better. And there you have it. We've got our own fully functioning hoverboard. So if you like this video, please smash that like button, and it's going to support the channel quite a bit. If you'd like to see more of these videos, subscribe, and don't forget to comment below and let me know what you think and what items you'd like to see me create next. It's been a lot of fun creating this one, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one.